It felt like a standoff between two master painters, each flinging color and chaos onto the canvas in a bid to create a masterpiece. Arsenal and Paris Saint-Germain. Both showed up, both bared their teeth, but only one side walked away with something to show for it. A 1-0 win for PSG, sure, but that scoreline is just scaffolding. What it felt like was 96 minutes of breathless theater, orchestrated by players who didn't come to play football. They came to set it on fire. Ousmane Dembele. That man walked into the Emirates like he was on a personal revenge tour and decided to make the home crowd his supporting cast. 4 minutes in. That's how long it took him to say, "This is mine now." He started the move, glided forward like a phantom through Arsenal's midfield, and then finished it with a first-time shot that kissed the post before slipping in like it knew exactly how much drama we could tolerate. And after that, well, if you thought PSG would go into hiding and cling to the lead like a frightened squirrel with a nut, you'd be wrong. They weren't trying to survive the game, they were trying to win it. And so were Arsenal. This was a match with feeling, and not the fake kind. Not the let's pretend this is epic kind. This had urgency in its bones. There was a current running through this game, invisible but undeniable. The kind of thing you can't measure with statistics or graphs or those smug heat maps everyone loves to retweet. You felt it in your chest. This wasn't a match. This was a fight. Clean, technical, full of mutual respect, but a fight nonetheless. Let's talk about that Arsenal disallowed goal, shall we? Marino's header. The Emirates roared like a volcano cracking open. And then, cold silence. Like a magician's sleight of hand, the celebration was gone. Offside. Tighter than a jar lid at your grandma's house. You could see it in the players' faces. Not anger. Not even disbelief. Just that aching kind of frustration that only football can gift you. It's almost beautiful how cruel this sport can be. And yet, even with the disappointment, Arsenal never shrank. They surged forward. Saka, Martinelli, Trossard. They tore into PSG's backline like a pack of wolves wearing designer boots. Donnarumma, he played like a man with all the cheat codes. He didn't just stop shots, he absorbed them like some massive Italian sponge that had been dipped in divine reflexes. And PSG, they weren't passengers. They almost made it 2-0, twice. Ramos hit the bar so hard it echoed. Neves missed the kind of chance you don't sleep well after. You could almost hear Luis Enrique on the touchline having a philosophical breakdown in real time. They could have buried this tie, but instead they left the door open. A crack. Just enough for Arteta to peek through and think, we've got this. Because despite the score, this didn't feel like a win or a loss. It felt like a promise. This was part one of something bigger. Something boiling. What did we learn? That PSG are not the brittle, soft-gloved outfit people love to dismiss. They were composed, brave, at times even poetic. And Arsenal? They're not tourists anymore. They belong in this conversation. This was high-level, continental chess, disguised as football, with just enough chaos to keep you from breathing normally. Deserved win for PSG? Yes, but only because someone had to win. If both teams could take the trophy home tonight, I think we'd all be fine with that. But they can't. So it's 1-0, and we move. 4 minutes. That's all it took for Paris Saint-Germain to tip the balance of the first leg. 4 minutes into a Champions League semi-final, and Dembele, bless him, decides the time is now. He drops deep, knits a move together like he's casually threading a needle while jogging, and then shows up at the end of it like, oh, you thought I was done? Bang. Off the post. In. 1-0. The kind of finish that doesn't just score a goal, it casts a spell. That goal set the tone. The Emirates, silenced. Arsenal, shell-shocked. And PSG, they looked like they were going to waltz away with it. The first 15 minutes were Parisian poetry. They swirled, they danced, they glided past red shirts like they were cones at a training ground. You almost expected someone to yell Olé from the stands. But then, something shifted. The mood, the rhythm, the pulse of the game. Arsenal blinked and remembered who they were. Not guests, not hosts, but contenders. Declan Rice, that human battery pack in the middle of the pitch, started pulling invisible strings. He broke up play, carried the ball, pointed, screamed, dragged the team up by its collective socks. From minute 15 to 45, it was Arsenal's turn to paint. No goal to show for it, but there were moments that felt like it could all tilt. Martinelli nearly steered one into the net like he was playing snooker with his boot. Saka slipped through tackles like a bar of soap and whipped in dangerous crosses. Trossard, ever the chaos merchant, buzzed into channels and laid off slick passes like he was handing out candy. But then came Donnarumma. Gianluigi, the Wall of Paris, standing there like someone told him his mortgage depended on every save. Low shots, high headers, tricky deflections, didn't matter. He caught them all like falling snowflakes. Calm, unbothered, allergic to conceding. First half ended 1-0, but you could feel the heat rising. Arsenal had grown into it. PSG had faded slightly, their breath shortening with every gunner's run. It was a tale of two phases, dominance then defiance. Second half, now that was tension. Right after kickoff, Arsenal did what any sensible bruised animal would do. They bit back. Rice floats in a perfect ball. Marino rises. Heads it home. Explosion. It's 1-1. The roof nearly comes off. And then, video assistant referee, that dead-eyed, soulless reaper of joy. The weight, the stillness, the cruel unraveling. Offside. Barely. Microscopic. You could measure it in eyelashes, the kind of call that makes you want to throw a shoe at the moon. But the goal doesn't count. PSG breathe again. From there, the match becomes a pressure cooker. You could feel it. No, you could hear it. The thud of the ball, the groans, the gasps, the occasional scream of no from 1,000 emotionally fragile fans. Arsenal turned the dial up to 11. Martinelli has the Emirates on its feet more times than a wedding DJ. Rice wins every ball like it owes him money. Trossard puts in a performance that feels like it belongs in a gritty sports movie montage. But PSG hold, and not just hold, they strike back. Suddenly Ramos is through. Time slows. He lifts it. Clink. Off the bar. Off. The bar. You almost pity the aluminum. Then Neves has one of those wide-open shots that players dream of, and he sends it to the moon. Not just over the bar, possibly over the stadium. And still, Arsenal surge. They keep probing, cutting, passing, lunging. But PSG, they start to dig in. Deep. Like a side that's been in this situation before and knows how to suffer. It ends with another Arsenal corner. Donnarumma sprawled out, time dragging itself to the finish line like it had run a marathon. Final whistle. The PSG bench leaps, the away end erupts. And Arsenal, they just stand there. Hands on hips, shirts soaked, faces like statues. That second half wasn't football. It was emotional cardio. It was suspense, heartbreak, euphoria, comedy, and cruelty compressed into 45 minutes of lunacy. You could write novels about it. You could choreograph an opera to it. And that's the thing. It wasn't just 1-0. It was a chapter, a heartbeat, a glimpse into what makes this tournament feel mythological. First half, Paris came out to play. Second half, Arsenal came out to fight. And somewhere in that storm of high-quality football, one goal stood stubbornly alone. One more leg to go. And you can already feel it vibrating on the horizon. Arsenal and Paris Saint-Germain. Two clubs that couldn't be more different on paper, and yet on the pitch. Practically mirror images. At war with themselves as much as each other. Let's start with the hosts. Arsenal. This team has been walking around with a chip on its shoulder the size of the London Eye for over a decade. No Champions League semifinal since 2009? That's more than a stat, that's a wound. And this was their shot. Under the bright lights, at home, with the wind of Real Madrid's collapse still at their backs, they looked ready, hungry, maybe even a little obsessed. But obsession is a fickle friend. It can push you forward or pull you apart. Arsenal started like they just hit snooze on the biggest alarm clock of their lives. The opening 10 minutes, a sleepwalk. PSG pranced through them like a parade float. It was only after Dembele's opener, after that early punch to the jaw, that they woke up and remembered they had something to fight for. Credit where it's due, though. Once Arsenal found their rhythm, they were relentless. They looked like a team that doesn't just want to win. They need to. You could see it in Declan Rice, charging forward with the ball like it personally insulted him. You could see it in Martinelli's grimace after every missed chance. This is a team with systems and tactics, yes? But underneath all that, raw emotion. It's what makes them great. It's also what makes them vulnerable. Because for all their pressure, for all their possession and passion, they couldn't find the net, couldn't break the door down. There's something cruel about football like that, when you do almost everything right except score. And then there's Paris Saint-Germain, the romantic tragedy of European football. A team that has had more superstars than the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and yet never quite got the ending they wanted. What stood out about PSG wasn't flair, it was maturity, controlled chaos. They didn't dominate the match, they managed it. Like someone carrying a priceless vase through a crowded room, they didn't panic, even when Arsenal turned up the volume. It was composed, pragmatic, at times boring, and yet completely necessary. Luis Enrique deserves credit here. He set his team up to absorb the pressure, but not hide from it. PSG didn't just put 11 men behind the ball and hope for the best. They had phases where they looked dangerous, where they should have put the game to bed. Ramos hitting the crossbar, Neves wasting a gift. Those moments could come back to haunt them. But let's not forget, they made those chances. They weren't lucky. They were sharp. The contrast between the two sides was almost philosophical. Arsenal want to become something. PSG want to prove something. One team still writing its legend, the other trying to silence every snide whisper about bottling it. Tactically, Arsenal wanted width and overloads. They trusted their wingers, Saka and Martinelli, to cause havoc. And they did. But PSG stayed narrow, compact, suffocating the space in front of Donnarumma like a boa constrictor with cleats. Hakimi and Mendes were walls that sprinted. Marquinhos and Pacho were statues that moved. PSG didn't play beautiful football. They played grown-up football, the kind that wins you things. And yet, for all their discipline, they didn't finish the job. One goal is never enough. Not in this competition. Not against a team like Arsenal. The away leg still looms, shadow-like, over this win. That Parc des Princes night? It's not going to be a coronation. It's going to be a trial by fire. These teams are not polar opposites. They're twins raised in different households. Arsenal full of energy, poetry, chaos. PSG full of control, calculation, and just enough flair to remind you they still believe in magic. Next week, they do it all again. Let's hope the football gods are paying attention. Let's talk about the people. The humans inside the shirts. The ones who turned this semifinal into a 96-minute fever dream. Because this wasn't just teams going to war. It was characters, flaws and all, stepping onto the stage and delivering performances that felt personal. Let's start with the man of the moment. Ousmane Dembele. Have you ever seen someone look both completely relaxed and completely locked in at the same time? That's Dembele. He didn't just score the winner. He threaded the entire match with his fingerprints. That goal was so clean, it should have come with a dry cleaning label. He starts the move in midfield, ghosting into space like someone forgot to mark threat. Then he finishes it off like a man who's been watching that same shot play out in his dreams for a decade. Right foot, off the post, into the net. Clinical, artful, French. And when he wasn't scoring, he was haunting. His runs had a kind of mischief to them, like he was daring Arsenal defenders to blink. He left Timber looking like he was trying to solve a riddle in real time. Dembele made the Emirates his playground, and then walked off early like the cool kid who already knows he aced the exam. Behind him? Dew. Electric. The kind of player who doesn't need a map, just a ball and a direction. His footwork was borderline unfair. It was like he had cheat codes installed in his ankles. Every time he picked up the ball, you could hear the intake of breath from the crowd, like they knew something weird and wonderful was about to happen. He didn't get on the score sheet, but he absolutely got under Arsenal's skin. That's value. Now let's move to the back, the PSG fortress. Donnarumma, you magnificent brooding giant. They could have thrown anvils at him, and he still would have parried them away with a calm shrug. His saves weren't just reflexive, they were statements. He said no to Saka, to Martinelli, to Trossard, repeatedly and with escalating disrespect. The man saved Arsenal's expected goals and then sent them an invoice. Marquinhos, leader, quiet assassin. The guy plays like his heartbeat never goes above 50. He was in every lane, every tackle, every inch of space where Arsenal hoped to breathe. Alongside him, Pacho, understated but vital. The two of them treated their penalty area like a family heirloom. You do not mess with it. You don't even look at it wrong. But let's not pretend this was all PSG's story. Declan Rice, if football had a pulse, he was it. The man ran like he was being chased by time itself. Defending, passing, breaking lines, stealing souls. That run that led to Trossard's chance. Peak box-to-box midfielding. There's something primeval about the way he moves, like he's dragging his team forward with the gravity of his will alone. And Marino, poor Marino, scored a goal that didn't count and played like he still believed he could do it again. He made clever runs, held space, pressed like a man who drinks tactical diagrams for breakfast. That disallowed header might haunt him, but his influence on the game was real. Saka and Martinelli, dangerous, flawed, relentless. Saka had moments where he looked like he was cutting into another dimension, dancing through defenders like a silk ribbon on fire. But PSG boxed him in, forced him wide, made him second guess. Martinelli had more clear chances and missed most of them, but his drive? Unquestionable. If effort alone scored goals, he'd have had a hat-trick. And then there's Trossard. If football had a soundtrack, he'd be the solo violin. Always dramatic, slightly unpredictable, and capable of magic or mayhem. He had that one chance, that one real one-on-one chance, and Donnarumma denied him like it was nothing. But he kept going. He always does. Odegaard, meanwhile, was the conductor without an orchestra for large stretches. The touch was there, the vision, intact. But PSG made it so hard for him to find the rhythm. It's like he was trying to play jazz in a soundproof room. It wasn't his worst performance, but it wasn't enough. And how about Saliba? Cool under pressure, tackling with the precision of a surgeon. But even he looked rattled at times. Ramos and Kvaratskhelia had a way of drawing him out of position, of turning the calm into chaos. Let's not forget Hakimi and Mendes, PSG's fullbacks who ran like they were being chased by something, constantly tracking back, bombing forward, dictating space like territorial hawks. Even the subs had moments. Zaire Emery came in and closed the game like a bartender shouting last call. White gave Arsenal some late-game stability, but the spark never quite returned. This match wasn't just systems grinding against each other. It was people, brilliant, flawed, fascinating people. And in 96 minutes, they didn't just play football, they built something. A story with arcs and echoes and cliffhangers. So here we are. 1-0 to PSG, but the second leg is already screaming from next week. And every one of these players knows it. This isn't over. This was just Act 1. And that was across the pitch, over and out.